Grab your cup. Do you know someone who always needs to be right? They always need to be right. Whatever it is, the smallest thing, the biggest thing. But I'm right, so I just got to keep proving that I'm right. How about you? Are you someone who really stands in, when I'm right, and I need to prove that I'm right all the time? I've been that way in my life, so I'm not afraid to say that, right? Let's talk about that a little bit, because being right, the need to be right, is a way to protect ourselves from being vulnerable. So here's what happens. When we're really young, it always comes back to when we're really young, we had things that were painful that we didn't have any control over. And so a way to start to assert control and to protect ourselves from feeling vulnerable is to be right. You could go into first grade and be right with your friends on the playground, whatever's going on. No, that's mine. No, you can't do that. Being right gives us a sense of power. I feel more powerful when I can assert that I'm right. I don't feel vulnerable. That's really what it comes from, is I don't want to feel vulnerable. I don't like feeling vulnerable. When I was vulnerable, when I was little, I didn't have any power and I got hurt. It was painful. So now, instead of allowing vulnerability, I'm going to make sure that I'm right all the time. And I'm going to use that as like a wall. It's like a protection. It's like a hardness against vulnerability, if you really look, okay? Sure, I know plenty of times you are right. Plenty of times I'm right. But what is that commitment to being right doing in your life when you look at all of the other things? If the commitment to being right in an effort to not be vulnerable, what you're actually doing is stopping yourself from growing. Because if you look anywhere in nature, growth happens when we're vulnerable, when we're willing to experience, when we're willing to have some pain. But even in nature, growth happens. Like if there's a crustacean with a shell on it, it either needs to stay small and twisted and conform to the shell. The shell is being right, protecting from vulnerability in our metaphor, okay? But for the crab, the shell is the protection from vulnerability, protection from where it could get hurt. If it stays inside that shell, it will not grow. It cannot grow because the shell is a finite amount of space. Any tree, any flower that's been, growing and existing for a long time, the place where there's growth are the place where the shoots are vulnerable. They're very tender, they're green, they're not hard and rigid yet like the trunk. So the places of growth are places where they're vulnerable. When people refuse to be vulnerable as a way of protecting, and being right is a way of protecting, then they are refusing to grow. Because what is possible when you give up being right, what's possible on the other side of that, because being right, what does it get you? What does it get you? But if you give it up and say, okay, I was right, so what? But what I really want to be is connected to my partner. I was right, so what? What I really want to be is relaxed and not walking around with my sword and shield all day. What I really want to be is at peace. Being right does not allow you those things most of the time. Most of the time, being right is going to block vulnerability, block growth. If you want to grow into a more peaceful person, a more connected person, a more expressive person, you're going to have to give up being right. And it's a choice, right? There was something else I was going to say about that, but just think about that right there. Oh, this is what I was going to say. We also are right about ourselves. If you have made a decision about yourself, you're going to be right about it. And by being right about it, you won't allow yourself to grow. So if you have made a decision about yourself, I don't succeed with diets. I'm not good at that, whatever that is. I don't get to have those kinds of experiences. If you're going to be right about yourself, you are going to, it's like living in that shell, not allowing growth. You're going to feel protected. You won't go and try the thing because you're already right about it. So maybe you've tried 10 diets and those 10 times that you tried to shift your body didn't work. So now you're right about, my body can't do any differently. When you're right about it, what if the 11th attempt with a different strategy is the thing that will make it all work? But by being right about it, you're keeping yourself in your protective shell. You're not going to allow the vulnerability to try one more time because it was painful the first 10 times. So you're going to be right about it, and then you're going to block yourself from growing into a different physical experience that you would really like to have. That's just one example. But think about how you are in your relationships. Think about how you're right about all of the people in your life, or how you're right about how things are. And if you could actually give that up, if you really look, what does being right get us? Maybe a sense of satisfaction for a little while. If you could give that up, what would be possible for you? Vulnerability can become a very scary thing because when we were vulnerable, when we were little, it oftentimes might have been painful. That's what you're protecting against. But you're not little anymore, and you can move through whatever you need to move through, but only if you allow yourself to be vulnerable. If you're wanting to be vulnerable and not be right, give me a high five, give me a hands up, give me something in the comments, like I'm on board. I don't want to be right. I would much rather be vulnerable and grow in whatever ways growth means for me to bring me towards the life experience I want. Give me a high five in the comments. Have a good day.